What if I told you that the mighty Roman Empire wasn't just brought down by barbarian hordes and political assassins, but by something much smaller? Something you could hold in the palm of your hand. It's a story of how tiny metal discs, the coins that built the largest empire the world had ever seen, became the very poison that helped tear it apart. Welcome to 10-Minute History. I'm your host, Jake Sullivan, and today we're uncovering the secret history of Roman money, a dramatic tale of power, propaganda, and a 500-year-long war between the state and the counterfeiter. In the earliest days of Rome, there was no money as we know it. The economy ran on barter. A farmer might trade grain for pottery, or a craftsman might swap his work for livestock. In fact, the Latin word for money, pecunia, comes from the word pecus, which means flock or cattle. Your wealth was literally measured in how many cows you owned. But as Rome grew, barter became too clumsy. They needed something more practical, and like many ancient cultures, they turned to metal. At first, they used rough lumps of bronze called aes rude. To buy something, you'd have to break off a piece and weigh it for every single transaction. Imagine doing that every time you wanted to buy bread. Eventually, they created huge cast bronze coins called aes grave, or heavy bronze rye. The main coin, the es, was supposed to weigh 1 full Roman pound. These things were massive, but they were a step towards a standardized currency. The real revolution, however, came from a crisis that nearly destroyed Rome itself, the Second Punic War against Hannibal. Rome was on the brink of collapse, and it desperately needed money to pay hundreds of thousands of soldiers. So around the year 211 BCE, they launched a radical new currency system. At its heart was a small, high-purity silver coin that would change the world, the denarius. The denarius was small, portable, and made of nearly pure silver. It was perfect for paying the army and for major purchases. This new system, born of desperation, not only helped Rome defeat Hannibal, but also financed the expansion that would lead it to conquer the entire Mediterranean. As the Republic continued, the coins themselves became a battleground for political propaganda. Ambitious politicians called moneyers began putting images on the coins that glorified their family's achievements. This reached its peak when Julius Caesar did something shocking. He became the first living Roman to put his own face on a coin minted in Rome. To his opponents, this was a clear sign he wanted to be a king. After his assassination, his killer Brutus minted one of the most famous coins in history. It showed 2 daggers and the inscription EIDMAR for the Ides of March, brazenly celebrating the day they murdered Caesar. It was the ultimate political statement, struck in silver. When Augustus became the first emperor in 27 BCE, he took this system and perfected it. He created a stable, integrated currency that would last for 2 centuries. There was the gold aureus for the super wealthy, the silver denarius as the workhorse of the economy, and a series of brass and copper coins for everyday life. 1 gold aureus was worth 25 denarii, which was worth 100 large brass sestertii. This system was a huge success. A soldier in Britain could be paid the same trusted denarius as a merchant in Egypt, uniting the empire's economy. But more than that, the coins were the empire's mass media. Every coin had the emperor's face on it, a daily reminder to millions of people of who was in charge. The back of the coins were like miniature billboards, advertising military victories, new buildings like the Colosseum, and even the emperor's generosity to the people. For nearly a century, this system was the bedrock of Roman prosperity, the famous Pax Romana, or Roman peace. But then came the Emperor Nero. Nero was known for his extravagant spending, especially on his gigantic golden house in Rome. Facing a budget shortfall, he came up with a clever and dangerous solution around 64 CE. Instead of raising taxes, which was politically unpopular, he decided to tamper with the money itself. He slightly reduced the weight of the gold and silver coins, but more importantly, he reduced the purity of the silver denarius for the first time, from over 97% down to about 92%, adding a little copper to the mix. From the government's point of view, this was brilliant. From the same amount of silver, they could now mint more coins. This extra profit, called seigniorage, went straight to the treasury. To the average person, the new coins looked and felt almost identical to the old ones. But Nero had set a dangerous precedent. He showed that the state could create money out of thin air just by making the coins less valuable. It was a temptation that future emperors would find impossible to resist. Over the next century, the silver content of the denarius slowly but surely declined. Under emperors facing wars and plagues, the purity dropped to 85%, then 75%. The age of sound money was coming to an end. If the 2nd century saw the slow erosion of the currency, the 3rd century saw its complete and utter collapse. This period is known as the crisis of the 3rd century, a time of constant civil war, invasion, and economic depression. It all started with the Emperor Septimius Severus, who famously told his sons, "Enrich the soldiers and scorn all other men." To enrich the soldiers, he gave them a massive pay raise. To afford it, he slashed the silver content of the denarius from 75% down to a mere 50%. The coin was now half silver, half copper. His son Caracalla went even further. In the year 215, he introduced a new coin that became the symbol of this monetary chaos, the Antoninianus. In theory, it was a hobo double denarius holoa, but it was a fraud from the start. It was tariffed at 2 denarii, but it only contained about 1.5 times the silver. It was a cynical trick to make the state silver go further. After the last Severan emperor was killed in 235, the empire descended into 50 years of anarchy. Over 20 so-called barracks emperors rose and fell, each one proclaimed by his army and desperate to pay them. With the tax base collapsing, their only option was to debase the currency into oblivion. The Antoninianus, which started at 50% silver, went into freefall. It dropped to 40%, then 30%. By the reign of Gallienus in the 260s, the collapse was total. The silver content plummeted to a mere 2 to 5%. The coin was now just a bronze slug with a thin silver wash to make it look shiny. This wash quickly wore off, revealing the worthless core. This had a devastating effect, perfectly demonstrating what we now call Gresham's law: bad money drives out good. People started hoarding the old, high-purity silver coins. They disappeared from circulation, saved as a store of value. Only the worthless bronze Antoniniani were used for daily shopping, and their value plummeted. This led to runaway hyperinflation. As people lost all faith in money, prices for everything skyrocketed. Papyri from Egypt showed that the price of a measure of wheat, which had been stable for 200 years, exploded by hundreds of thousands of %. Life savings were wiped out. The economy reverted to a primitive state of barter and government requisition. The state itself had to demand taxes in goods, like grain and cloth, because its own coins were worthless. The entire crisis came to a head in a bizarre and violent episode. Around 271 CE, the workers at the Rome Mint, led by an official named Felicissimus, launched a full-scale armed revolt. Why? Because the new emperor, Aurelian, was trying to crack down on their own massive, internal counterfeiting operations. The mint workers were getting rich from the chaos, and they resisted the reforms with violence. Ancient sources say 7,000 people were killed in the fighting. It was a bloody mutiny at the mint, showing just how central the currency crisis had become. While the state was essentially counterfeiting its own money, a massive shadow economy of illegal forgery was thriving. Roman counterfeiters called falsarii had several tricks up their sleeves. The most common type of fake was the fourré, a French word for stuffed. They would make a core out of cheap bronze or copper, wrap it in a thin foil of silver, and then strike it with fake dies. When new, it looked and felt convincing. But with a little wear and tear, the copper core would start to peek through. Another method was to make clay molds from a real coin and cast copies using a cheap lead-tin alloy. These were usually poor quality, with a soft, soapy look and a visible seam around the edge. The Roman state took counterfeiting very seriously. The penalty for a free citizen was deportation to a remote island and loss of all property. For a slave, it was death. But the practice was rampant. So how did an ordinary Roman protect themselves? They might drop a coin on a hard surface to listen for the distinctive ring of solid silver. Or, more directly, they would take a small chisel and make a test cut on the coin's edge, immediately revealing a fake core. Many surviving Roman coins still bear these ancient test cuts, a physical record of the constant battle between trust and suspicion. During the chaos of the 3rd century, especially in breakaway regions like Britain and Gaul, the official supply of coins stopped completely. To fill the void, countless local workshops sprang up, producing crude copies of the Antoninianus. These are known as barbarous radiates. For years, historians saw these as simple, illegal forgeries. But a more modern view suggests they weren't meant to deceive. They were a form of emergency money, a local solution to keep economies from grinding to a halt when the state failed. They were a substitute currency, accepted because they were useful, not because anyone thought they were real. By the time the Emperor Diocletian took power in 284 CE, the monetary system was in ruins. He launched sweeping reforms, introducing new, high-purity silver coins and large bronze ones. But his most famous effort was the Edict on Maximum Prices in 301 CE. This law set a fixed price for over 1,000 goods and services, from wheat and wine to the wages of a lawyer. The penalty for charging more was death. But the edict was a catastrophic failure. Producers simply stopped bringing goods to market, and black markets flourished. It was abandoned within a few years. Lasting stability, at least for the rich, finally came with Constantine the Great. Around 312 CE, he introduced a new gold coin, the solidus. It was made of pure gold, and its weight and purity were maintained with incredible consistency for over 700 years. It became the dollar of the Middle Ages, and its name gives us the word soldier from the Latin for one who is paid in solidi. However, this created a two-tiered economy, a stable gold currency for the elite, and a volatile, inflating bronze currency for everyone else. The story of Roman currency is a powerful cautionary tale. The rise and fall of the denarius mirrors the rise and fall of the empire itself. The debasement of the currency was a key factor in the economic crisis that crippled the Western Empire, impoverished its middle class, and made it impossible to reliably fund its army. And the lessons are still incredibly relevant. The Roman experience is history's greatest proof of the dangers of inflation, showing what happens when people lose trust in their money. The principle of bad money driving out good is a fundamental law of economics. And the struggle between official mints and counterfeiters continues to this day, with modern banknotes full of security features that are the direct descendants of the Roman money changers' test cut. From a measure of cattle to a symbol of imperial power, and from a tool of prosperity to an engine of collapse, Roman currency tells one of history's most dramatic economic stories. It's a reminder that the value of money is a shared belief, a belief that is hard to build and dangerously easy to break. So what are your thoughts on this? Can you see parallels to our world today? Let us know down in the comments below. If you found this interesting or learned something new, please give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to 10-Minute History for more deep dives. Thanks for listening.